Hello everyone, South Africa and all over the world. We are here again from Masculine Learning and Maski TV. We are saying join us to do finance and growth today. So we are going to just look at the basics of what it is that you need to know and how you're going to calculate the equation for examination for any finance and growth for your examination, right? So the objectives will be at the end of this session. You need to know and understand how to work around simple interest and compound interest and using the formulas as we solve the exam kind problems, as well as applying them in the real life context, be it interest, high rate purchase, inflation, and population growth as well. And we want you to learn and understand the way in which exchange rate happen in our daily lives. Okay, so that is the first example that we had. You can see here we have our formulas that it is not in the formula sheet. Remember, grade 10s, that whenever you're writing an examination, you do not have a formula sheet handed to you, but you need to know these formulas. So how do we know and what it is that we need to master for us to get into that? So we have one which we call simple growth, but in normal space we used to call it simple interest. So that is a linear one. You can see there A equals P, for which A represent the final amount, which we call it total amount after investment or after you loan or after saving. So we can call it then final amount or total amount. Then we have P, which is represented by the principal amount. That is the money that you invest or the money that you save or the money that you'll be paying back as you have the loan at any point. So that we call a starting amount, right? Then we have I, which we call an interest rate. So I, it is interest rate per a particular period, be it a month, a year, or 5 years, 10 years, and so on, right? Then we have N, which we then call it a period. Can be number of years, number of months, and all that. So you can see that for a simple interest and as well as compound interest, the letters that we use for the formulas are the same, but the only difference is where the value of N or the N is located. So with the simple interest, the N is located inside the bracket, while with the compound interest, the N is located as the exponent. So please remember that that is what makes them different, and that is, you will see when we are working out how are they different. Okay, so let's do a quick example there together. You can see when you are working on the simple interest, here's the question that we have, which we can just quickly do together. Prenita invested 2,000 Rand at a 5% simple interest per year for 3 years. So we pause and we analyze what we have, underline and make sure that we show what it is that we have. So for the fact that this is an investment and the amount that is invested is 2,000, I did say to you guys previously that the value of P literally represent the money that we put in. In this case, it's an investment, so that means that our 2,000 will be the invested amount, right? And we have a 5%, which is a simple interest, right? So we did say that the 5% will then be rate, so we're going to call that an I, right? That is our interest rate. Then we have the years, which we are given to be 3 years, which means that N will then represent, and 3 will then represent our N. Okay. Then they said calculate the total amount. So because they are saying we are looking for a total amount, automatically we should be able to realize that we have labeled our P, we have labeled I, we have labeled N, but we don't have A. With that, that means that our total amount is going to be A. Then you just have to make sure that every time you have this kind of questions, you label them like that, and then you ensure that you write the correct formula down. For this is a simple interest, so we're going to say A equals P, 1 plus IN. Remember that for simple interest, N is inside the bracket multiplying the I. Then we start substituting. We said that P is 2,000. So let's write it down, and then we put inside our bracket 1 plus I, we said, is 5%. Some of the calculators will be able to calculate 5%, but if that is the struggle, do not worry. Just say 5 divide by 100. Why are we dividing by 100? Because we want to remove the percentage. So that is how we write it when we want to remove the percentage, because the division of 100 represent that percent. So if your calculator cannot do it, don't worry, just write it like that, and then you multiply by 3, and then you close the bracket like that. Then from there, you just use your calculator. You calculate it from the calculator. And if you want to simplify your 5 divided by 100, you can do that. And then you just show that the second step or the next step after that will be 1 plus 0,05, which is coming from 5 divided by 100. You still multiply that by 3, and then you leave it. Otherwise, you can just put everything from the first step of substituting into your calculator, and then you'll be able to get the correct answer, because you need to avoid leaving out some values as they have commas, right? So if you are afraid of that, put everything in your calculator, and then you get to the answer, which in this case, our answer is 2,300. Okay. If you have got that correctly, please try by yourself to use N being equals to 5 and pop that to our chart, and then we'll be able to analyze it together through the end or towards the end of the session. So we can do that. The similar approach we can do when we are looking at the compound interest. Same question, same year, same P, and same everything. So we can read actually and start analyzing it as well. So Prenita invested how much? 2,000. That is our P. And then at a rate of how much? 5%. That is our I. But now it says that it's compounded. So that for the fact that it's compound interest, then we are going to use a different formula. But then our years or our value of N is still the same as 3. And we need, or we are asked as well, to calculate the total amount, which is what we are looking for as the value of A. So let's do that. We had A equals P, open the bracket, 1 plus I to the exponent N. Very, very important. Always try to put your formula down and then you substitute. That is your key. Then let's do that. Let's substitute. Same as we did. That is 2,000. And then we have 1 plus our interest is actually 5 divided by 100, which can be 0.05, and then our N is 3. So if you multiply that, properly calculate it together, you will be able to see that we have 2,315,25 as the answer. So that is 2,315 and 25 cents. So that's what we are having here. Did you notice anything? Did you see something different between this one of simple interest and the one for compound interest? If yes, pop it on the chart. What is the difference that you have seen? What it is that you are finding that is showing a different as well. Then we will be able to also elaborate more into that to make sure that we are all aligned. So you can actually use calculations to get that. All right. Okay. Now, in a real life situation, as I've indicated, we do have like people who save money on the bank, and the banks have like interest that you earn. So that is one of the things that they calculate it using either simple interest or compound interest. We have high purchase cost when we buy cars, we buy appliances, like we buy phones, everything that we have. That is the one that we say is high purchase. And we also have inflation, which is a rising price over time, and inflation is always calculated over the compound interest as well as the population growth. Those are actually exponential growth for this. All right. One part that we have is the exchange rate, as it's indicated. So exchange rate is just literally one current value, or the term of the current value from one country to the other, which changes every day, every hour, or every minute. So the one that you have now as we're starting this session, it's not the one that you can find at 6:30. So there's always the change in rate depending on where it's coming from. For example, the petrol price if it increase in rand because maybe there's it's weak against the dollars, and that is always shown in the news as well. The import and export things, when we buy things from somewhere else, and if we send things from South Africa to somewhere else, there's those rates that has to be exchanged. And also those who travels to go overseas and all that, the money that we use here in South Africa does not really work in another country, so they need to be changed where we are all using exchange rates. So this is an example of how the exchange rate can be calculated. And today's one, just before the session, I have checked and it was showing that $1 equals 17 rand 66 cent when we are using South African rand. But this was just before the session started. It's possible that if you check it now, it has changed. But this question was saying calculate the value of $400 in rand if the exchange rate is given to be $1 equals 17.66 or 17 rand 66 cent. So what is it that you do here to answer that question? You simply just write it like this. You said, okay, I have $1. You just say I have $1 that is equals 17 rand 66 cent, right? So what it is that we are looking for, or what are we given? So we are given that we have $400, right? But we are looking for whatever amount of rands, right? So we do have $400, we do have 1 rand, we do have $1, but we don't have the total number of rand. That is why they are saying we must calculate that $400 in rand. So the easier way of getting this right is literally through cross multiplying. Cross multiplying means that if I have the same amount of values on the left as I have on the right, I can actually multiply them across, right? So I can multiply the $1 with the X rand, and I can as well multiply the $400 with the 17 rand 66 cent, just like that. So let's do it. If I have my $1 multiplying it by let's give a space. So I have to multiply that by my X rand. Then I have my $400 multiplying it by my 17 rand 66 cent, like that. So you can see that if I say 1 multiplied by X, I will remain with my X. And then when I multiply 400 and 17 rand 66 cent, I am going to have 7,000. I'm going to have 7,064 rand. Because it's money and we are converting it to rand, you always have to say that it is in rand. You have to write the unit to say that it is in rand, and you get to the answer like that. So suppose we were given the statement, but we were told that we need to calculate the dollars while we are given the rand. That will then be a division. So an opposite of what we have done would have been the division, while in this case we just have multiplied the two. For you to master the skill, you have to have done many questions for this kind, for you to be able to know where do I multiply and where do I divide. All right. Now, when we are busy with that, there is many questions that are either in our textbooks or previous question papers. For sure, you have seen them with your teachers as well. This is taken from our one question paper of 2018. You can find that through the DBE website, or you can just Google and you find it. I'm going to just leave you with it while you're trying to find them and answer those questions. See you right back. Stay tuned. All right, let's get into it and see what it is that you guys have found. But imagine, I told you that you always have to try and make sure that you analyze the question. Sometimes it will be more scenario that you have to write it down as you summarize, but sometimes you can be able to annotate it in the question paper and get it to the right space. So let's read this one together as we go through it together. Remember, this is maths, and in maths, we do it together. If you wait for someone to do it, you might not be able to follow. Okay, so this was given in the 2018 question paper. As I've indicated, they said read the advertisement below. So what is the advertisement about? They say buy a Samsung J5 for only, then they give you an amount, 229 per month. And they said you have 24 months to pay. I almost felt like they said it was just 229. I was like, J5 Samsung, that is cheap. But they come and say per month, which then triggered me to say, then how many months must I be paying this and how much will it be? Right, but there's no deposit required, which is the most of the better way in most cases. But let's see, let's explore and see what it is that we have. Then they said calculate the total amount. You see, calculate the total amount to be paid over the period of 24 months. One more tip, always check how much marks is given. Right, so you can see they said is 1 mark. There is no way for them not to give you the formulas, and they want you to now use a formula and substitute and use a calculator for 1 mark. No, right? So you always have to look at that and say what it is that I have to do. Reread the statement if you need to, but make sure that you get to the correct answer or the correct scenario, which is corresponding to the marks they are giving you. So here we are told that you are paying for 24 months and you have to pay 229 every single month. So for us to calculate the total amount, that can be that, just like that. Okay, so in 7.1, we are looking for the total amount. That will be equals to 229 multiplied by 24. You just do that and then you will get your answer as taking your calculator and let's see. So that is 229 multiplied by 24, which gives us 5,496 as the total amount that you will have to pay if you are paying 229 per month for 24 months. Then you get your 1 mark. That is how they do it. Now the second question, they say the monthly installment quoted in the advertisement is calculated on hire purchase, right, agreement, which charges interest of 7.5 per annum on the cash price of the cell phone. Show that the price of the cell phone is actually 4,779 and 13 cents. So now they just want you to show that the actual amount is not 5,496, rather it is 4,779 and 13 cents. How will we show that? First, you would need to understand what kind of hire purchase or what kind of a formula are you going to use and what it is that you're going to do to get to the answer. As I said, look at how much marks is given to you. Here it is only 2, so that might mean that you need some formula there and then you just get to what you are looking for. So let's see. We have given the point whereby we can be able to get to the answer in the way that you describe what hire purchase is. If you check from our previous slide where we put a real life situation, we did say that hire purchase will be calculated using your simple interest formula. So that is A equals P 1 plus IN. Right. So what do we have at this point? So we do know that the cell phone is 4,779 and 13 cents, and we do know that the I is 7.5. So you can write that and you can show that this is an I, right? And then also the N value is not going to use 24 months, rather it's going to use 2 years. Because 24 months makes 2 years. So what are we looking for? You can see that we have 4,779 and 13 cents. What is that? So that we want to prove the point that the total amount of all this is not 5,496, but it's rather 4,779 and 13 cents. So we will use the amount that is you have calculated, which is what you have found in 7.1. So that will become now your A value, which was your total amount. If you remember very well, we say that A value is always the total amount. All right. So that will be 5,496. Which is equals to what you are looking for, which is the initial amount, and you have everything that you need because you have I as 7.5, which you can say 7.5 divide by 100, or you can just put your percentage and you multiply that by 2, which represent your 2 years, right? Then you can now from here multiply it out and so that you can remain with P. So let's do one more step, although it's not necessary if you are able to get to the answer right away. So in this step, we want to try and just apply BODMAS, calculate whatever it is that we have inside the bracket, which is 1 plus 7,5 divided by 100 multiply by 2, and that gives us 1 comma, so I'm going to bracket that 1,15. So that is 1,15. Then after that, we can then divide both sides by 1,15 so that we remain only with P. So let's divide both sides by 1,15. When we do that, 1,15 from the right will then divide for us to have 1, and then we will remain with P only, which will give us the answer. So if you take your calculator again and you say 5,496, divide it by 1,15, that should give us what they said it should be. So it is giving us 4,779 and 13 cents indeed. So we have calculated that. Remember, most of the steps that we are doing here, they are really not necessary because they just want you to put your formula down and then you can then use your substitution and then get to your answer. So this is how you can actually get it done. For those who are not left-handed or who are prefer to have their answer on the left and their variable on the left and the answer on the right, they can write it this way, but it doesn't really make a difference because it's the same. All right. I hope you guys got that. Then we have the third question. They said now calculate the total interest paid over a period of 24 months if the cell phone is bought on a hire purchase. So they are saying now you must now calculate the interest, the total interest. That is simple mean the money that you are paying more. That is what they want. They just want us to calculate the money that you are actually paying more, and you also just look at your tip there, which is 1 mark. So for us to respond to that might not really take us longer. So how will we find that? Remember that we had our 5,000. We had our 5,496. And if I subtract the total amount that they are talking about there, which is 4,779 and 13 cents, I should be able to find the total of the amount or interest that was paid. In other words, the money that was paid more than the money that was supposed to be paid if ever we bought it cash. Right. So let's subtract. Our calculator is saying that the total amount is therefore 716.87. So that is 716.87 cents. If you are using your calculator and you see that this is not the correct one, please pop it on the chat, because we do want to have the correct answer there. Or we can just quickly just see if we had it correctly. So we do, that is 716.87 cents for us to get to the answer like that. Okay. Let's see. 7.4. Now we have a different scenario. They said the cell phone is now insured. Right. There was no insurance. They were just talking about an installment. They say now the cell phone insured at a rate of 11.5%, right, of the cash price. So that is 11.5 of the cash price. So they are actually directing it to the cash price. The insurance is done for that. The total insurance is calculated and then splitted over 24 months. Right. And they said it is then added to the monthly installment. So that means you have to first calculate how much is the insurance when it's splitted, and then you can then now calculate the new monthly installment, meaning that you're going to take your 229 and then you add your new monthly installment on top for you to get to the right answer. So how will we do that? We're going to say 4,779 and 13 cents or comma 13, then we will multiply that with the percentage, because that's what we are looking for of the cell phone. So that is 11.5%, which we can divide by 100. Let's see. If we calculate that, we're going to have 4,779.13 multiplied by 11.5. Then we divide that by 100. That is giving us 500. And so I'm going to write it here. It's giving us 549.599995, like that. And then we're going to divide it by the total month of the year, not 24, because each and everything that we are doing here, it has to be in the yearly spaces. So we are dividing by the total month of the year, which is 12. And when we do that, we need to be able to get to the money that the insurance is charging. And let's see, that is giving us 45 rand 80 cents. Because it's 45,7999583, which if you convert or you round it, you're going to get it as 45 rand 80 cents. This is only for the insurance, right? So what they want is the monthly installment. So our new monthly installment is going to be, can just 229 plus 45.80, which is 45 rand 80. And if we add that together, so that is 229 plus 45 rand 80, that gives us a total of 274 and 80 cents. So which means that this is going to be the amount that you had, right? So that means that you're going to get the amount of, or you're going to be paying 274 and 80 cents. All right. I hope you guys have got that or captured it properly. Okay, so when you are trying to just try and finalize the other one, I will just give you a few more minutes to drink water and then we come back to it. All right. See you. I hope you guys have got that or captured it properly. Okay, so when you are trying to just try and finalize the other one, I will just give you Okay, so as I always say, we are running the marathon, but we don't go alone. We always go with those ones who run and ask questions, which we like quite a lot. So we have Nicole online who have asked us one question, and Nicole was saying, when we are saying that in this question, for example, where we said you don't have to write anything or all of these things, she was asking that if which steps can you leave out, if that is what is a possibility. So I would say you don't have to show this step, so I can literally just delete the steps that you don't have to show, because you can do it on a calculator without you showing them up, or it doesn't really have the marks even if you put it down. So you can remove that, because what we're literally going to mark here, it is this step and also your last step. So we're literally just going to mark your substitution and also the answer. So if you wrote this one as your answer, we will mark it. But if you went on and write the other one, we're going to mark it. So that will depend on it. So literally you just need 2 steps for you to get the full marks. All right. That is one of the question. And then we had one more. I think I'm going to just try to go back a little bit with this one as well. So you would remember that when I do this, I did it in a very simplified format where I showed how you can get into the position whereby you are now multiplying. And one of the things that you can also do, since Nicole have asked the question of what can I leave and what can I not do, even here you really don't have to go through this part. If you have practiced a lot and you understand how to deal with the exchange rate calculations or any kind of calculations, you can leave that out and then you can just go straight to this step of multiplying and then you go on. So you don't even have to show that the $1 multiply the X rand and you can just come straight away and you tell us that $400 will then in rand will be 400 multiplied by 17.66, which is 17 rand 66 cent, and then you get to the answer. So you don't really have to do all that, but for those who needed to understand, that is the part of the teaching, the teacher I am, to make sure that I teach for understanding. All right. Okay. Then we have the last one. So let's check this one, and it has 4 marks. Let's see how we're going to get to it in the productive way. Okay. Here we're told the cost of the cell phone is subject to inflation and increases to a cash price of 5,100. But there is a word inflation, which when I say it, I always just relate it to compound interest. If I see that, I say compound interest formula must work. There's no way, right? Then they say that is also still after 2 years. So that is after 2 years, and they say calculate the annual inflation rate. So in this case, you can see that we are looking for something else. We are looking for the rate. We are no longer looking for P. We are no longer looking for A. We are now looking for I. Right? For us to get that, we would have to first write down the formula. Let's change the color. We have to write down the formula first. As I've indicated, when I see inflation, I run to the one formula that I know it can work with it, which is my compound interest formula. So what do I have in this case? I do have things that can help me to get the solution. Remember, I have my 4,779 and 13, and now I have my 5,100. So when I substitute, then I will just go and put the values that I have, because they say that is now my new money or the new amount that I have. Then I have 4,779 and 13 cents, which is now my P, or the money that it was before. Then my I is what I'm looking for, so I'm going to just leave it like that. But I do have the N, which is over 2 years. So I'm going to write my 2 there as 2 years. All right. Then right from there, my next step for teaching purpose will be, let's write it down, all of it, will be for me to then eliminate everything that is next to the I, for me to remain with I. So I have 5100, which is 5,100, which is equals 4,779 and 13. Then I have 1 plus I, which is squared. So I want to make sure that I remain only with I. So first I will divide both sides by 4,779 and 13 cents, as well as what I do on the right, I also must do on the left. It's not an option, it's a must do, right? So after I divide like that, then I can then use my calculator, but I already know that on the right hand side, my 4,779 13 cents will divide like that, and I'll remain with 1 for that. But then on the left hand side, I can then use a calculator. So 5,100 divided by 4,779, 13 cents, that gives me something like 1,067 and so on. You see, in this case, I am leaving and so on because I haven't yet get to the answer. So always when you deal with finance, do not round off until you are fine, until you are done. So I'm leaving it on my calculator. I'm not changing it. I'm not canceling it. So I'm leaving my 1,06713 and so on in the calculator, but I write it like that just for the space. Then here I will be left with 1 plus I to the square, right, to the exponent of 2. So when I get that, remember that for me to get rid of the square, I need to put a square root, because the square root will then get rid of square. Remember, the square root have a 2 somewhere there, so that 2 is the one that helps us to eliminate the square. But what I do on the right, I also must do on the left. I can't just put a square there and move on. I also have to put my square root in both sides, for which my left hand side will have the square root like that. So I will leave it like this with 1, square root of 1,067. Remember, that's not the final value. Then I will just leave it like that. But on my right side, I'll then have 1 plus I. What happened is the square root have removed the square. Now after here, without changing anything on my calculator, I will just go and say, remember that was the answer, so I'm going to leave it like that. But when I press square root and I say answer, the whole sum of 1,067 comes in. then I will just get my, so that gives me 1,033 and so on. Then I have that with my 1 plus I, right? Until this point, I hope you guys are still fine and you are still following. If not, please just pop it on the chart for us to help you. So when I have it like this, I can now move the 1 from the right hand side to go to the left, but we don't just move. I would have to subtract it. But what I do on my right, I must do on the left. So that is what is going to happen now. Then I'll remain then on my right with the I, but on the left I had 1,033 and so on. So if I minus 1 there, then I will have 0,033 and so on, right? But this is just an I. For me to write it with the inflation rate as they want, I would have to then multiply that particular amount by 100. So that is my I, which I will write it this way. So the inflation rate will be equals to 0,033. I did not remove it on my calculator, but I'm going to then multiply that with 100 just as it is on the calculator. So multiply by 100, that gives me 3,30 or 3,3%, because this is a rate, right? So that is how we calculate them. And I'm very sure that Nicole will be asking herself, how do we then mark this? So before we get that question, let's manage expectation and make sure that we just mark it for her so she can see how it is going to come around. Okay, so let's look at it. First, you have managed to get your formula. This one is not just a formula, so it does have a mark. The formula here is respected to that extent. But again, when you do the second step where you substitute what you know, we also give you the mark for the fact that you know whatever that you have to substitute. That is a critical point. The rest of the steps from this point here up until the point where you are here, this point are all methods that you all have to use. Some won't even have to go to it. They will just move from there and can use calculator all the time until they get to the answer. So all those ones are not awarded any mark. However, we come and award the mark for where you have managed to get to the I itself and where you get the final answer. So all this part from the step number 2, after you have substituted, and then up until where you are subtracting the 1, can actually be done on a calculator by itself. So there is no marks for them. That is how we mark it. All right. So it is very, very important that when you do these questions, you do them with a cautious and make sure that you do it productively. But before we can actually say bye to one another, I needed to just share something with you and show you so that you can go home and do more. I hope in this case, financial math seems very simple, right? You will be able to do it because it's not really difficult. You just need to know what it is that they've given you. You need to know the language that is used, like compound interest, like simple interest, like high purchase, like inflation, all those kind of things. If you know those languages, what they mean and what is intended for, it's easy for you to respond. So always make sure that you analyze the information that they give you, annotate, and make sure that what they have given you, you rather have labeled it down properly or you have marked it down nicely. All right, so this is the question paper that I will leave you with, and I want you guys to go to wherever you can be able to, especially that advisory is that you go to the DBE website, you'll find the question paper of 2017 with the similar questions, but in this one you can see that they are literally asking the same thing or the similar things. First, you can see that they have given you an amount and they have showed you that there's an interest rate and they're saying this is simple interest, but they come and say calculate how much the interest is there. So you annotate all those small things that they give you. At the end of the time, you'll be able to answer the question productively. You can see even this one, they come and talk about inflation. When I hear that word, I said I run and I don't look back, and I make sure that I use a compound formula to get to that answer. But what I wanted to give you a hint on is the last question. Please take note. For this one, you can see that it was done in 2017. So by then, as I said, that this amount of the exchange rate changes every minute. By that time, it was saying $1 is 12 Rand 91 cent. But today, it has changed. Same applies to the euro. That if you check today, it has changed. But for practice purposes, because we want you to know how to calculate, not necessarily to say how much is it today, we allow you to go on and use these particular things. And then whenever you feel like you get stuck or you feel like you don't understand how to do it, how to solve those problems, please always just go to Maski. The number is 072-091-0388. Ask Maski, then Maski will give you a summary or maybe step-by-step solutions of what you are looking for. Our next lesson will be on number pattern, but please stay tuned and reach us everywhere that you can be able to reach us. From Maski Miller Learning and Maski TV, we thank you for watching for this whole 45 minutes, quite a long time, but we promise that we'll see you again next week. Bye.
And now we enter our next exciting chapter with the launch of Maskiverse, an inspiring trio of innovations, our AI-powered learning companion, captivating TV content, and a vibrant playground for interactive learning, and our own dedicated app, all coming together beautifully to deliver learning outcomes through technology.